Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Irish Illustrated Insider, Week 4 for the Fighting Irish, looking for their third victory against Miami of Ohio. Chuck Martin returns to Notre Dame Stadium for the first time in 7 years, and we're going to get a chance to talk about Chuck a little bit and talk about how Alabama stole his kicker. And Notre Dame's a 28-point favorite again at home to a MAC team. And hopefully for the Irish, it doesn't work out or it doesn't end up the way it did the last time. Tim Priester with Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated, John Bryce of the Football Scoop and Irish Illustrated, and Pete Sampson of The Athletic. We have a full crew. Let's talk a little bit about Notre Dame, Miami, and also, of course, we met with Marcus Freeman for about 10 to 15 minutes here to talk about not a whole lot, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Tim O'Malley?
I think we should talk injuries since we're not allowed to talk about them anywhere else.
Yeah.
Where would you guys like to start? We don't know what Josh Burnham's status is other than questionable, and Jordan Faison is not on the injury report. So that's probably all our listeners need to think about. I would guess Josh Burnham not quite ready since he was not dressed last week, and Jordan Faison would be since he was going through full warm-ups and full pads. That would be a boon to the wide receiving core, and that kind of leads us to the one other takeaway I have from Freeman's press conference today. A lot of questions about Greathouse playing far fewer snaps than usual, playing 12. I'm not sure the 12 package has that much to do with it because Jaden Harrison got plenty of snaps. But the second half being a complete blowout probably has a little to do with it.
JB?
Yeah, I thought it was a bit about the game plan early, and then he had the one explosive that Notre Dame got called back by a holding penalty, and they're still trying to figure some things out right now. And they needed Harrison last week because they were using some more motion and doing some different things with him, getting the tight ends much more involved, presenting some more eye candy, so to speak, to get on film so that other opponents have to see more of that and try to prepare more for that. So I don't think Greathouse is diminished in any way, or what their belief in him is diminished in any way. It was just one of those days. He would have played more in the second half if they needed him. They absolutely did not need him. I think the question about Chris Mitchell was salient because he's got 4 catches for 44 yards through 3 games after being among the nation's leaders and having over 1,100 yards. But then again, nobody has more than Bo Collins, who has just 116 receiving yards and maybe 9 catches or something like that. So all those things are indictments of the Notre Dame passing attack, but it's about winning football games right now. And Notre Dame needs to get one this weekend for sure.
And
I thought,
Mitchell.
yeah, I was going to say, I
Oh,
thought
sorry,
Greathouse
Pete.
would have played a lot more last week, but that's just because I think he's really good. Of all other than Bo Collins, I like Jaden Greathouse as like the number 2 receiver on the team.
That was his best play. That was, don't you think, this year, Pete, that was called back? Probably
Yeah,
his best play this
yeah.
year. Yeah.
I thought we'd be seeing a play like that every week from
Right.
him.
Me too.
But as John referenced, like the passing game is not in a good way right now. The receivers bear the statistical brunt of that. So I'm not sure how much there is to be read into who's playing what and who's being featured in what way because they've got some bigger issues than receiver usage.
Yeah, Mitchell Evans is second on the team in receptions, and he's barely played. I mean, last week was the first time Mike Denbrock said he felt like, the chains were off a little bit and he could do some things with them. And then Eli Raritan ended up getting the bulk of the catches there. So yeah, Pete, I agree with you. I mean, the passing game is it's got to be the quarterback in tandem with the wide receivers, and the quarterback isn't really in tandem with anybody other than Bo Collins at this point. So we'll talk more about that, but let's talk a little bit about Notre Dame, Miami of Ohio. We have some questions about, it's another MAC team and the similarities. We'll get into that more in segment 2, but I guess I'm going to give it away a little bit. There aren't a lot of similarities right now because they are not running the football anywhere near the way Northern Illinois did. Their quarterback, Brett Gabbert, is coming off of a significant injury last year and to end the year. And he's not running nearly as much. He is still dangerous as a passer. When you watch him, especially this year, because he probably isn't because he's coming off the injury from last year, he probably isn't quite as athletic as he has showed in the past. But he doesn't impress you with size. He doesn't necessarily impress you with arm strength, although he does throw the deep ball pretty well. He doesn't impress you with with quickness, but he has been a productive quarterback for Miami of Ohio, and a guy that, when most good things have happened to Chuck Martin's team here in the last couple of years, Brett Gabbert has been a quarterback, although they did win their last 4 regular season games without him. Came up a little bit short in the bowl game against Appalachian State. But Brett Gabbert doesn't necessarily blow you away in terms of just presence, but then you snap the football to him and he gets things done for the Redhawks.
I think it's incredible. Marcus Freeman played against him in 2019 as the Cincinnati at Cincinnati. It's just shocking how college football goes these days. It's like when I talked to Kaiser about leading the team through the loss in Northern Illinois, we reminisced about previous early season losses, what it was like. He's like, yeah, well, there was Georgia. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. You were there for Georgia, Jack. It's just kind of shocking. I think we're going to get through game number 4, and Ethan Hampton's going to be the best quarterback that Notre Dame has faced so far.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Gabbert's definitely better than Ethan Hampton.
But he won't play better.
Well, Ethan Hampton hit the luckiest pass that any of us will see probably in the next 10 years. So yeah, I don't know if Gabbert will hit something like that, but like most people don't win the lottery. So I think Gabbert he's definitely still getting back up to speed as anyone would after the injury he suffered. A multiple compound fracture. And Chuck has said that it would have been great if Miami could have started the year against Murray State and UMass, so Gabbert could sort of get his bearings again. Instead, they're the only team in college football to open with 3 straight Power 4 opponents. So it's just a tough situation for Gabbert, but I think he's incredibly experienced and very capable quarterback. But I'm just not sure he's going to have much of a chance against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, Gabbert's strength has been he makes really good decisions. He's got high football IQ. He's got about a career 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, but he's already turned it over a couple of times this year. And I don't think Miami is quite as good as it was a year ago en route to, I guess, an 11-win MAC championship season. And not just because they lost their kicker. So anyway, I don't think that I don't think Miami is athletic as Northern Illinois. When I looked at these matchups coming into the season, I thought that Miami would be the better coached team between Miami and Northern Illinois. But again, we're on record as saying Northern Illinois whipped the headset matchup and all the way down to the field a couple of weeks ago here in South Bend. I do think Miami is a well-coached team, but I don't think if they get Notre Dame out of position, it's a 6 or 8 yard play instead of some of those chunkers that Northern Illinois had a couple of weeks ago. So I do like this matchup overall for Notre Dame.
I do think I agree that I think Northern Illinois is a better football team, and a lot of it is because, and again, you're right, John, not just because they lost a kicker, but because they lost, Rashad Amos, the running back to Mississippi State, Caden Woolard, defensive end, productive defensive end. He went to Oklahoma. Wide receiver Greg Lavardane, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, went to South Carolina. So they were hit by the transfer portal much more significantly than Northern Illinois, which is a credit to Thomas Hammock and keeping those guys in the stable. But the Redhawks definitely have been hurt more by the transfer portal. Now they brought in Corey Suttle, a defensive end from Iowa State, also a defensive end from Rutgers. And well, this guy, I don't think he just came in, did he, from Michigan State? Cade McDonald, the slot receiver that Al Golden referred to the other day. That kid's good. He's dangerous.
He's 2 years there.
2 years there. Yeah, I didn't think he just came in. He's dangerous. He's caught 8 passes in each of the first 2 games and had over 100 yards in each of those games. So yeah, they've got some players, but the losses are pretty significant. And again, we talked about the running game. They are averaging 1.42 yards per carry. That's last in the nation, and their 11.5 points per game is second to last in the nation. So they're going to have a tough day. They're playing the wrong defense to get healthy this week. And I think that the Northern Illinois game was a wake-up call for the Notre Dame defense. I'm not sure you'd call it that for the Notre Dame offense, because the offense still has issues, certainly in the passing game. But for the defense, they're very capable of locking back in as they did against Purdue. So this is the wrong team for the Miami offense to be playing this week.
They're paying for the sins of Northern Illinois this week too. It's
Yeah.
close enough. Louisville is not paying for the sins of Northern Illinois because Notre Dame wasn't going to overlook Louisville, but Miami is. I think that's what it comes down to. If Stanford was up next, that'd probably be another situation for it. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is going to be tough, but they are a well-coached team and they'll find a way to not pull a Purdue because they won't openly quit when guys are running out the clock in the first half either at Miami of Ohio. They'll look better than Purdue on defense.
I can guarantee you their defensive structure is going to be a lot better too.
Yeah, I mean that's just the
You mean
way
they
it
won't
is.
have they won't have a single high safety running up from 28 yards off the line of scrimmage?
No,
How in the world?
He was so bad in my X things to say film review. I could not take my eyes off how bad he was. He looked like he was wearing rollerblades. He's falling down everywhere. What?
Yeah.
I mean,
and prior to that, he looked a lot like Harrison Smith and Kyle Hamilton.
he looked like a less coordinated Houston Griffith in that game. He was terrible.
Jesus.
I mean, good Lord, I've never seen
bad. I mean, that is just that's so unfair to do to a kid like that. You know, a kid that obviously has a ton of talent, but the number of missed tackles, it's no wonder.
Mike Mickens will coach him up next year, Tim. Speaking of stealing people, that's fine.
That's a good idea.
No, I think it is a good idea. There's no such thing as tampering, Markinson. All right, we're good.
That's a really good idea. Anything from we talked to Marcus Freeman, as I said. Burnham still questionable. I brought up Viper. I made a really stupid mistake, and when I said Viper, I lumped Kingston Viliamo Asa as a potential Viper. What he would do, John, you talked about this last night in Chicago. We'll talk about the Notre Dame Club of Chicago here in a bit, but that KVA is tailor-made for bringing him up on the edge of the line of scrimmage and bringing him off the edge. He's not going to move to Viper. He's a linebacker, as Marcus Freeman said to me, but they need to be a little bit creative. Traore can't take every snap. Marcus Freeman said that Tui Alamaka had his best week by far, which I don't necessarily think would have been really difficult to do based upon his past. And Logan Thomas. I think Logan Thomas is a guy that we could see in spot situations in clearly in passing downs.
Yeah. Go ahead, JB. I did ask Golden about Logan Thomas, but I'll follow up on that.
I was just going to say that they like Logan. They like his twitch. He's got really long arms that they like as well. We saw Kingston coming off the edge some during camp. So that doesn't mean Viper, but it doesn't mean he can't come off the edge. We'll see. I also suspect that they're trying to get through the next two games and then get to that bye week and also reassess how all the pieces can fit onto the field.
Talking to Golden about the defensive ends, he kind of offered, without saying Thomas's name, or maybe somebody did in a prior question, he said we have 5. If Josh is healthy, we have 5. We hope we can at some point get to 6. Logan Thomas is the 6th. So right now it is Traore and Tui Halamaka. I assume Burnham's out, so Oben and Bryce Young.
Right, Young has to. I'm not saying Bryce Young is a Viper either, but maybe you would have a little bit of flexibility if Burnham was healthy, but he's not, clearly. So they're still piecing it together. It's just a damn shame what happened to Jordan Botelho because he's playing such good football. And Tim, we talked about what a great tandem he was with Traore. But now Traore gets more snaps. And man, he's quick off the snap of the football. There's a level of quickness there that you don't see with most guys. I love the commentary. I wrote about it in Thursday Thoughts. I love the commentary from Marcus Freeman and Al Golden and Jason Anye, just what they think about Boubacar Traore and his future. And Marcus Freeman said it after the game. He's good now. He's going to be great. And I asked Al Golden that directly. Do you agree with that he can be great? And again, it went back to practice habits and even his background and his training and his family and just how they're all wired. They're wired to go out and work and be the best they can in everything that they do. And with Traore, that's every snap that he takes, even on the practice field.
I will say I asked Jason Anye about Traore and Bryce Young earlier this week, and his eyes lit up before I could even finish asking the question about both of those guys. He's really excited for Boubacar right now in this moment and thinks that he is on the cusp of being a really impactful player for Notre Dame. When it came to Bryce Young, he said, I have a hard time putting into words what that guy can be. He's so talented. He's what he said, he's what, 260 pounds. And look at the way he moves, look at the things he does. You can tell when you start asking the peers about some of their teammates, and before you even finish the question, they're starting to answer or they're lighting up. Number one, it lets you know it's genuine. Number two, it lets you know they're glad to answer the question because they have a strong opinion about it.
Would not surprise me at all if Boubacar Traore was a 3-year player here. The way things the arc he is on right now is real steep, and man, and it's like I realized that the last week he had the pick six, and we all talk about that, but it's like when you go back and even watch the A&M film, when he long arms somebody coming off the edge, I mean, he can put his hand in the middle of a 6'6" offensive tackle's chest, and when that offensive tackle reaches out to grab Traore, his arms don't get there. I mean, the guy is just incredibly long. He's a prototype NFL edge rusher.
He really is. He's not quick twitch. He's quicker twitch.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of those guys, and you see this with pass rushers, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to explain it properly, but like there's almost like an illusion. He almost like creates an illusion with his quickness. It's like, okay, he's here, and then how do you get there? How do you get there so quickly? And I saw some of that against Purdue, and you see that in the great pass rushers, and yeah, he's got a chance. And you're right, Pete. And that arc is going to be even steeper because he's going to get more reps now because Botello is out. So, yeah, really looking forward to seeing that, and looking forward to, I think Logan Thomas has a little bit of that as well. We saw real brief glimpses of that during preseason because all of our glimpses are glimpses. All of our all of our sights are glimpses in practice during the fall. So yeah, looking forward to that. And we'll talk more about the offense, but the offense has to get things going in the passing game as well. Looking to upgrade your wardrobe, founded by ND alum Ga Wang. You've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out esqnclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. And a big thank you to ESQ Clothing and the Notre Dame Club of Chicago. Hosted Irish Illustrated last night. Really great event. Really great part that we didn't it wasn't a huge crowd. It's not a really big area at ESQ there, but and Pete, you were there with Matt Fortuna recently. But a great group of guys that asked a lot of questions. Even somebody by the name of Judge Arthur Vandelay.
I was fired up for that. Fired up for that. Say Vandelay Industries. Say Vandelay Industries. That was spectacular.
Who has been on many of our podcast questions, and just might have got a question in here for segment 2 called Burning Up the Boards.
And I want to say, I just want to say, met Ryan Grady, a former Duquesne football player who got his MBA and is now a CPA at the event last night. I only bring that up because I had to get home from Chicago last night because this morning I had a 7:30 a.m. live podcast with the Duquesne head coach, Coach Schmidt. So that was really cool. And I got to name drop Ryan to him, and he laughed and talked about him. And so it was really cool. It was a great event, and it was great getting to meet those guys. But Vandelay Industries wins the day.
Yeah, we win the day because of the Notre Dame Club of Chicago and ESQ for hosting last night. Go Wayne, thank you. Coming up, segment 2, Burning Up the Boards.
If you're coming to a game this season, you have to check out Game Day Your Way, Notre Dame's tailgate service provider. Game Day offers everything you need, including tailgate gear, catering, and even beverage delivery right to your spot. And their Irish Express transportation from Chicago allows you to tailgate while you travel to their all-inclusive party zone in South Bend. Let Game Day deal with all the hassle so you can focus on the fun. For tailgates, tickets, transportation, and more, visit GameDayYourWay.com.
Welcome back to segment 2. We call it Burning Up the Boards. Our first question from Zach S.F. Foster. It's actually S. Foster, but I want to put SF in there for the 49er fans listening among us. How does what Miami wants to do offensively and defensively match up with Notre Dame. NIU seemed like a perfect storm of being in a great spot, great game plan, and being good at what Notre Dame struggles with. Do the same concerns exist with Miami?
Yeah, we mentioned a little bit in segment one that I mean, these are different teams right now. They're both veteran teams and they're both front runners of the MAC, but NIU's offense was based upon running the football, and right now Miami can't do that. They're averaging 1.42 yards per carry. Notre Dame's defense presumably comes back in the same frame of mind it was 7 days ago, and that's trouble. And a lot of it is, the guys that the running back that they lost, Amos. Actually, Kenny Tracy, who was projected as their starting running back, who and he's got size, 5'10", 223. He's hurt. I don't know what he has. It's undisclosed, but he's hurt. So they're in a bad way. It's not the same kind of comparison. I think Gabbard is probably better prepared to throw the football than Ethan Hampton was. He probably won't be as fortunate, as you said, Pete, to make an 83-yard pass and run from a running back, but I don't think it's really the same thing. And Notre Dame's not going to, as you said, Tim, Notre Dame's not going to be caught off guard because of what happened with Northern Illinois.
Yeah, and I would just say, even though it's so early in the season that you figure Miami's a little bit beat up already because they have had to play at Northwestern, they have had to play Cincinnati, so they're a little dinged up already from those contests, and they've got some injuries that you've already alluded to. Gabbert, the quarterback, is coming back from injury. That's also significant. You hope when the football team's having to play all these money games that maybe they're at least getting some decent NIL checks down there at Miami of Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, Miami doesn't have Ontario Brown, who Matt coaches feel like is the best player in the entire conference. So that's one of the big differences between the two. I think, NIU naturally does all that motion shifting on offense. That's less Miami's sort of default setting. Whereas NIU probably wanted to try, if they could run it 65 times on Notre Dame, they would have. Miami, if they could throw it on 65 times on Notre Dame, they would. The offenses are just built completely differently.
I gotta tell you guys, man, we rip on the quarterback so far without Reuben Owens at Texas A&M, and Miami has one gain of 10 yards this year, one rush of 10 yards. Tennessee has 32. Think of this.
Oh my God.
And Purdue, if you look at the dictionary, the definition of below average running backs was right there. Ontario Brown was Jim Brown compared to these guys that Notre Dame is facing in the first 4 weeks. I mean, it is a huge drop off. And Pete, I'm with you. They're going to have to control the game with some short passing, and you know how hard that is to do against Notre Dame. Man, man, this is a tough matchup for Chuck.
Yeah, Jordan Brunson has a 15-yard run, but the most yards rushing. But it's only been 2 games. They haven't played 3.
Yeah,
but
Brunson, 10-yard game.
Yeah, Brunson had 33 yards against Northwestern, and Kevin Davis, and again, a guy that Al Golden referred to by his number 8, is impressive. But they're getting on the football in the passing game because they can't run. He had 3 carries for 14 yards. He was a leading rusher last week against Cincinnati with 14 yards rushing. I do want to say, the defense is coordinated by Bill Brecken. You guys remember him? 2011 was an analyst for Notre Dame under Brian Kelly. Has become, I think it's his 3rd year with Chuck Martin as his defensive coordinator. They gave up the exact same amount of points per game that Notre Dame did last year. That was a really, really good defense. And they brought in Corey Suttle from Iowa State, Brian Ugwa from Rutgers. They've got 2 DBs from Mississippi State, Luke Evans and William Hardrick. They have a nickel back from Indiana, but they are giving up 5.62 yards per carry. They're not playing typical Miami defense. Now they held Cincinnati to 27 points, and I think a touchdown came pretty late in the game from that. So they held them to 20, and Northwestern only scored 13. So I don't want to underestimate this defense. Love their linebackers. Matthew Salopek and Ty Wise are they combined for 266 tackles last year. They're very active. Salopek was the MAC Defensive Player of the Year last year. It's a good duo. but they're still giving up 5.62 yards per carry.
Our next question, we kind of touched on this, but a little bit of elaboration needed, I think, is a two-parter from Irish 2001. Could you envision Snead or KVA coming off the edge on passing downs to supplement the Viper, which is how Tim Priester meant it really in his question to Marcus Freeman today? And then from DCC 9391 with the loss of Botello, what will Endy do at the position? Other than Traore, who'll get the majority of the snaps, who is the third player after possibly now spelling Traore?
Yeah, it's Logan Thomas, and Junior Tuihalamaka will get an opportunity to show that he had a good week of practice, and it sure would. Notre Dame sure could use him to really take a step forward, but we haven't seen that yet in his third year in the program. But that can happen, and he's going to get opportunities. But if he doesn't take advantage of them, Logan Thomas is going to take some of those snaps away.
I like the Snead and KVA off the edge. It's just not Viper. Yeah, and it's
right.
I mean, Snead we thought was going to be doing that the whole time. I think they found a new spot.
Snead already does that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that isn't a change at all. Logan Thomas feels like, I don't know, maybe
a little too soon.
Yeah, I mean,
I
wondered if he was going to be a guy that they were going to try to like do a sneaky red shirt with, like just play in 4 games.
On special teams, man.
But he's on the coverage team from kickoff one. He's been on the coverage team.
Yeah, he's them in snaps. Yeah,
but he's already played in 3 games. I'm assuming this will be the 4th, and you're probably not going to do the Jaden Osbury thing that you did last year with that. So, yeah, I don't know. It seems like that if they could have done that, they would have, but they felt like they couldn't. And maybe that's a compliment to Logan Thomas and just sort of the athletic ability he brings to this field.
He's like 25, 30 pounds heavier when he came. He was 199 when he came in. Again, he was injured and he couldn't do all the physical conditioning, strength conditioning that he needed to do, but he packed on good weight quickly.
Yeah.
And I hear what you're saying, Pete. I mean, it could be a little bit too much too soon to be talking about this, but they're in a situation where they need another pass rusher. They had 2 working together when they had Traore working with Botello, so they need a complement. JB?
Gold mentioned he flashed Thomas. Gold mentioned that Thomas flashed, but
to me too.
Not quite there yet. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think listening to Marcus today on his Zoom, there's going to be the potential for an opportunity this weekend for Logan. I think he's come on a little bit more quickly than what they had anticipated, kind of what Pete alluded to moments ago, that the way he's performed over the course of camp and catching some eyes and buying in on special teams is why we're seeing him now. I just think when you talk collectively about the edge, whether it's strong side or Viper, the fact that Marcus wouldn't even address Burnham today, the fact that Burnham didn't come close to dressing last week at Purdue, you shouldn't need Josh Burnham against Miami, but you probably do need him against Louisville, the way Louisville's playing, the type of game that figures to be. So I think that it's all elements of a bigger picture situation for Notre Dame as it pertains to the edge.
And we haven't mentioned RJ Oben. I thought that clearly was his best game of the 3, but it's still not very impactful. He still just gets washed out so easily in there, and he's 265. He's a stout guy. It's not what we saw at Duke. He's playing against it. It's not like he's,
insert joke like, here.
Well, it's not like he came from Southeast Missouri State and has now had to step up to a much higher level. He's playing against the same teams Notre Dame's playing against in the ACC, and he just hadn't stepped up. I thought there were a couple instances last week, but I think we're going to see youth served quite a bit in this game because you're going to see Traore, the redshirt freshman, and Bryce Young, I would imagine, is really going to up his snaps this week.
Philip. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Phila_Fell. Do you see any areas where the offensive line will be improved due to the experience of Coogan and Spindler, or will their skill sets have limitations that require material changes to the offensive game plan?
You kind of touched on this with Marcus today, Tim. It's tough for him to answer because he doesn't want to give you changes to his offensive game plan over a noon Zoom after the Hayes in the barn, of course. I mean, it is a little different. They could be very physical though. The Spindler Coogan inside can be physical. It's not as athletic. It's not close at center. It is a great luxury though. I mean, we're worried about how they got to change some things around. You just put in that's 2 starters from last year. Now, that's huge for Notre Dame. And Schroth coming back at some point and not having to be rushed because he can't make it back for Louisville. Does that make sense? You don't have like Georgia Tech would be great if he's full go at this point. I think that buoys the group too.
Yeah, I don't think that they're not improved.
No,
And it's like the starters were the starters for a reason. Maybe your screen game isn't as good, or maybe your outside zone game isn't as good. So maybe that there's certainly some changes, but it's not a massive drop off either. I think that they really should be fine for the next few weeks until Shroud gets back. I would be surprised if we saw a huge difference.
Yeah, maybe they're slightly more effective in short yardage situations because there's maybe a little additional physicality from the Coogan Spindler combo. Maybe it makes them block slightly better on some more designed quarterback draws and runs for Riley Leonard. But I mean, again, the belief in the program pretty much from the top down is that Billy Schroth and Ashton Craig are both NFL players. Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler are both really nice college players.
Yeah, I specifically asked Mike Denbrock about, what are the assets of Coogan and Spindler, not comparing them to the other two guys, because he did go on to say there's a reason why the other two guys are the starters, because they won the job. But, he said neither one of Coogan and Spindler like to, be physical and get their nose bloodied a little bit, which you always like to hear about your interior offensive linemen. We talked about this a little bit on Monday. What one of the great things about Ashton Craig, and one of the reasons why he's going to play in the NFL, is he's so mobile as a center, and he was injured on a play where they put him out in space. You're not going to do that with Pat Coogan. You're just not. And that was why I asked Marcus Freeman. We're getting abridged responses here in recent weeks. Like, could center be Coogan's best position just because he just really needs to hold the point of attack and get a little bit of push, not necessarily doing a whole ton laterally. You would like him to do that, but that's not a strength. And I said, might center be his best position? And he said, I hope that it is. That's
I thought that was kind of funny, actually. He's like, I hope so.
I understand. Yeah, I know. It made me look stupid again. I'm asking a lot of stupid questions this week, but what I meant was maybe his skill set fits that position a little bit better. But whatever. Hey, I'm here for entertainment purposes. Bring it on. That's all good. But no, they're not better with those two guys in a lineup, but they're not that darn bad either. The two guys combined for 23 starts, and they came in. They did a nice job last week. I know Purdue was playing like Purdue's playing, but still, these guys.
I got one for you. They are better off theoretically on paper than back in with these two changes, bringing in two starters than they were when we were like, oh my God, Anthony Knapp and Tosh Baker are going to Anthony Knapp and Sam Pendleton are playing. Like that wasn't Tosh Baker was involved. This is a change. We can all just be like, all right, it should be fine. That's what the depth was for.
Yeah.
We got question.
Yeah, go ahead. We have another offensive line question.
This is a tough one, so I'm going to kind of read it. From Wash ND, with the offensive line injuries in 24, it feels like the OL puzzle has become more complicated for 25. If Jagasa, Craig, and Schroth are full go for camp, where would Knapp be in the puzzle? Then he lists about 45 possible combinations for the offensive line, including Black joining the left tackle group. And this, he says he assumes Coogan and Spindler will not return for backup roles in 2025.
Yeah, we actually talked about this in Chicago last night. I brought this up because it is going to be, and that's it, Tim. Like you probably, I know offensive linemen don't transfer a whole lot, but this might be a situation.
No, I would think Rocco will go.
Right, where it happens because, okay.
Coogan probably.
Jagusa, not so much Will Black. He doesn't necessarily factor in right away, but Jagusa, Pendleton, Absher, they want to get on the field. Craig, Knapp, Schrouth, Wagner, Lambert. I don't know how.
Maybe Coogan will transfer too, now that I think about that as well. But I mean, I really think Rocco will and go try to start somewhere. And then Coogan just is, I mean, they both love, this is a dumb way to say it. But Coogan literally was talking about how much he loves Notre Dame. And
well, that's true. But I mean, he would have his degree and, he'd probably have his degree this year. He's a redshirt junior. So it's a great situation to have, but you got a lot of good young players there. You're going to want to get Lambert in the lineup as quickly as possible. Knapp, if he stays healthy, he's going to get a full year of playing. It's pretty hard to stick a guy that, really Knapp has been his most impressive against the best player that he played against, and that was in game 1 in his first start. Jagus has got to be. It's just right now it's very difficult to say, well, how's it all going to shake out? There are a lot of good players there that can play.
It's the best. I was going to say, best way it's going to shake out. Notre Dame's going to return all 5 starters on its offensive line in 2026.
Yeah. I'd be flat out stunned if Gerby Lambert's not a starter next year. There's just he's too physically gifted. We see it, just in the way his body composition is, the way he carries himself. Certainly, we hear it from the players and the people in the program. You could potentially look at a situation when you talk about all the variables available. Anthony Knapp having to play all this year unexpected could potentially utilize a redshirt year next year if Jagasaw came back and you felt great about Shrouth and Craig and you wanted to keep Emil Wagner at right tackle, or you have Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner in a battle at right tackle. If you think Lambert is your left tackle of the future, and then you have those 3 along the interior. Again, we touched on it last night. It's not just good depth. It's really elite depth at the offensive line position. It's the best position for Notre Dame. They're really good in the secondary right now. I like the strides they've made at linebacker, but they're the deepest and the most talented at the offensive line position.
And we know they're willing to change because they did it twice this year. Pendleton beat out the incumbent.
Well, and Joe Rudolph, we all would have bet Billy Shrouth was going to start last year.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you trust Joe Rudolph's judgment, which I generally do, Billy Shrouth wasn't quite ready as a year younger than those 2 guys last year. But Billy Shrouth is a healthy. Billy Shrouth is always going to be in this starting lineup moving forward. Question from PQ: what did it do? Do you think NIL has anything to do with the staff's thinking on who to play at quarterback? I see a lot of fans bring up how much Riley Leonard is getting paid for why does he remain as a starter? I think it's nonsense, or am I just naive?
I don't think they're playing the player at quarterback that they believe gives them the best chance to win week in and week out. We talked about it in Chicago last night. It's nuanced for sure because of the fact that this is a developing offensive line, and now it's been dealt 2 more blows from last week. So we go into Saturday with the Notre Dame offensive line missing 60% of the starters that it opened preseason camp with. Not that it started with in spring, that it opened preseason camp with July 31st. It's got 60% of those guys gone. Riley Leonard's skill set better fits a coalescing offensive line than anyone else on the roster right now. And Riley Leonard is not making $2 million. He's making 7 figures. I don't know where this number of $2 million keeps getting thrown around everywhere. It's not $2 million. It is 7 figures.
I would say that he should be the starter regardless of NIL, but NIL could be viewed as a reason that he still is because he's here because of NIL in the first place.
I would say, and you know what, Pete, I would say NIL won him the job initially. Now, I think at this point, the quarterback they deem the best, the guy that gives them the best chance to win.
Yeah.
Initially when you spend that kind
of.
Did
NIL win the job, or did 2022 and 2023 Riley Leonard win the job? Like Riley Leonard against Clemson and Notre Dame. Did that win the job?
That's fair. Yeah.
Well, 2022 and 2023 got him the NIL. They won him the job.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. But it's not. I mean, he did this against Clemson and Notre Dame last year.
Yeah, I just think that with college football, big picture, this is complicated for coaches because let's just say you bench Riley Leonard and then you want $1 million for a quarterback a year from now, and then you have to go ask for people for that, and they're like, "Well, why did we give you $1 million before for a backup?" Like,
that's why.
That happens in the NFL all the time. Like first round picks get the job whether they are ready or not because the front office is like, "Well, we're invested in this guy. We have to play him."
That's why you develop your damn quarterbacks and you don't have a different starting quarterback 5 years in a row like Notre Dame. And people are going to hate me for continually bringing it up, but it's 5 years in a row with with Riley Leonard being a different starting quarterback, which automatically means next year is going to be 6 years in a row. That is not a recipe for cohesion and sustained success, particularly when you lose two stalwarts to the NFL after their junior seasons from your offensive line last year, and you suffer injuries to 60% of your starting offensive line before the season gets to its third point.
Though, let's say they kept their starting quarterback from before, and you rolled last year with Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner. Then we'd be talking about how they didn't hit the NIL and didn't hit portal to get somebody at quarterback. If you want cohesion, you keep Drew Pine back there, then what?
Well, no, you should have recruited better to begin with.
So for sure. But I mean, the situation they were given was the crap that they had to deal with.
Yeah, well, I think it speaks to, okay, why was Bo Nix a success at Oregon, Joe Burrow a success at LSU, and Jaden Daniels a success at LSU, which Mike Denbrock even talked about it. Because in their second year there, they were really good. And Notre Dame sort of stuck on this cycle of one after the other. They haven't had that second year bump, and they cannot have it with Riley Leonard.
We had Tim asked us Monday who you would start. Would you start Riley Leonard or Steve Angeli if you're not?
Oh yeah, I'd start Leonard 100%. Wouldn't even think twice about it.
We're all wrong. Hey, NIL is like NFL from the standpoint, like when did Caleb Williams win the starting job with the Bears?
Second they got drafted.
On draft night. Yeah. Now I think now they would play, now it's game time, man. You gotta win. But the four of us believe that that's the right choice, but Notre Dame believes Riley Leonard's the best choice.
Irish fan 151, with all the talk about QB play, are the wide receivers getting separation? With no talk about Emil Wagner, is it safe to say he is meeting expectations or maybe exceeding them? Nice two-part question.
We need Drew Mentok back on here. Remember the stat from last night, John? Well, about the number of
pressures allowed.
Yeah, Wagner's number is pretty high.
It's 6 pressures for Emil Wagner through 3 games. It's 10 for Anthony Knapp through 3 games. Both of those are a higher figure than Joe Alt allowed all of last year. And as Drew Mentok noted, Alt and Fisher combined only allowed 20 pressures last year. And I do think some of those are skewed this year, the fact that they've allowed 16, because we have seen Riley Leonard choose to leave the pocket maybe instead of throwing in what might not have been considered a quarterback pressure situation. So I do think Emil Wagner has, for a first-time starter, for a guy that we know is a little bit underweighted, if not, but making up for it maybe with athletic ability, with agility, and perhaps strength that belies his 290 pounds. I would say he's been every bit as good as could have been expected, if not a little bit better than expected. He hasn't gotten Riley Leonard killed.
Yeah, I agree with that. And
very quick.
Pardon me?
Very quickly, Joe Alt in 7 starts when he was their age as a freshman allowed 11 pressures, so that's different than he got. Yeah. Obviously, you get better. You're Joe Alt, but I mean, 11's different than what he ever allowed last year, which is Tim, what, 2 rare, very rare. Yeah, it's.
I used your the comment that you elicited from Mike Denbrock the other day. Did you use that anywhere? I used it in my Thursday thoughts about the escape routes that Riley Leonard chooses. There's one play. I know you guys all saw this. There was a 3-man rush by Purdue.
And they dropped 8 on 3rd down.
Yeah, I mean, and he tried to run. Where are you going?
Mitchell Evans got open, actually. When he did have to leave the pocket, but he had plenty of time outside the pocket to stand there. You know what I mean? Like, the pocket was coming.
He could move within the pocket, but he didn't have to abandon the pass at that point.
Right.
That's what Mike Denbrock is dealing with right now. In addition to always wanting to escape to the side, and as you mentioned, the 3 quarterback analysts that have done the 3 games are all like, okay, you can't keep going that route. And then what happens is Leonard turns it into a 9-yard run. It's like, okay, well, don't do it. Great play. But in the long run, you need to step up, because it's the only way you can see your receivers and have the momentum going towards your receivers in order to throw a ball accurately to them.
I want to ask JB and Pete about this, because we were all in that press conference. I think it was post game when he talked about, it had to be. Leonard was up there and he talked about how Denbrock, they went through play calls and concepts that he likes. And at some point he joked and said, like, and he's really good about not putting in the ones I don't like anymore, because I told something along the lines of like, I told him if you put that in, I'm just going to run, and then laughed. I mean, that's funny, but it's funny because it's true is a Homer Simpson line we can go to right here as well. I just thought it was funny that Leonard actually said that, like, if you put that in, I'm going to run. So Denbrock is dealing with that.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. I mean, he gets yards on the run, but there's guys open downfield.
Pete, chime in, please.
I don't think Leonard sees his second read very often.
No.
It's if it's the first one's not there, his second read is to run it. And like the book's out on that now. Like that's going to be a problem at some point. And I think that, having a 3rd and 8, if you take away the first read, he's going to scramble it. And I thought Purdue, this is like the only thing Purdue did defensively that I thought was good was the drop 8 double spy. Because that actually is a good way to defend Riley Leonard. And everyone else that will play Notre Dame knows that now.
Well, what they're going to do is what L. Golden likes to do. As soon as that quarterback escapes, you bring a 2nd or 3rd level guy up. We saw a Don Schuler. I think it was against Purdue when he had a pass broken up.
Yeah,
he did.
He came from
about 12 yards. Yeah,
right. As soon as Card went laterally, a Don Schuler broke up, and that's what people are going to do more with Riley Leonard.
Yeah, and that's why I still think Notre Dame has to use the middle of the field more in its throw game, and that's one thing it can do. Is with Riley Leonard is being flush, and then they start to bring somebody up, that's going to open up the middle of the field even more. That's where he has to capitalize. We have seen video evidence of Riley Leonard in the past being able to find a second read before becoming a de facto running back playing quarterback. And that's what he's got to get comfortable with doing here again at Notre Dame. Again, you wonder how much of that was sacrificed because he couldn't practice in spring, how much of that is sacrificed even more or damaged, undermined a little bit more with every injury to the offensive line, because again, there is no cohesion there. He doesn't know exactly how these guys are going to block for him this week. He very clearly played the second half of the NIU game injured, and I think somewhere that's in his mind saying, okay, if my first read's not open, I've got to take off running before I get slung to the turf again.
For people listening, if they want to see this, because we're talking about this play like it was in a 66-7 game, but it was 14-0 beginning of the quarter. Right after 14-0, they had a 3-and-out because of this. It's a 3rd down they didn't convert. Like at the time Leonard didn't see Jeremiah Love, he ran for a 1st down. This was a 3rd and 8 he didn't convert, and you can watch it. You can watch him leave early. You can see that when he's outside the pocket, he could reset and look downfield, and he doesn't. And you can see Mitchell Evans, of all people who you might want to be looking for in these situations, break open when Riley Leonard comes out of the pocket. Like, it would have been a perfect time to fire one to Mitchell Evans. And it's kind of sitting there right after Notre Dame goes up 14-0.
Well, he needs to be. And if what Denbrock said is absolutely true, that Evans is now, he's ready to go. He said this was the first week where I thought he was ready to go, meaning the Purdue game.
Yeah.
Riley Leonard needs to know where Mitchell Evans is at all times. Question from Irish fan 151: with all the talk about the quarterback play, are the wide receivers getting separation? With no talk about him. Oh, did we just read that one?
We just did.
Yeah, but did we talk about the receivers?
We didn't talk about the receivers, though. Yeah.
That's why I'm reading it.
Yes, I think that they are. Not all the time. But I mean, there are definitely some moments where it's hard to see this on the TV copy, but where a receiver will break open deep, but like Riley Leonard doesn't see them breaking open deep. I'm not talking about Jeremiah Love, like, hey, I'm over here, like, Riley.
That's not breaking open. That's just being open.
Yeah. This is like a route coming open. That happens. Leonard has not really picked those up.
Yeah, I thought I didn't think that Notre Dame's wide receivers ran free very often in the opening game against Texas A&M. And when they did, Riley did a better job of trying to find them, whether it was Greathouse or throwing open Bo Collins or a chance that I think Chris Mitchell dropped in that game. But since then, I think Notre Dame's receivers have done a better job of breaking open, and they've just not gotten touches, so to speak. So it's all factors, but I would say the fact that Notre Dame's leading receiver only has 116 total yards is not an indictment of Bo Collins.
Yeah, I think Bo Collins would be the exception. I have a question for you guys because, like, we watch this closer than the average person, both in person, binoculars, replay of the game, and I'm getting all these comments about how Riley Leonard is not finding open receivers downfield. Can you see open receivers downfield when you're watching the TV copy? I mean, how do
Very
I
rarely.
I need an all 22 and I don't get an all 22. How are other people seeing this? Or are you taking a Jeremiah Love being open and just flatly stating that these receivers are getting open and he's not finding them?
There
We
was
all
a
know that he didn't on that one.
So there was a play against Northern Illinois on the first drive. Leonard ends up scrambling for a first down on it, where Bo Collins is running down the right seam. You can see all 11 Northern Illinois defenders in the box, and Bo Collins is past the last guy
Okay,
running off the
okay,
screen.
that's two. That's two
Yeah.
that we know of.
That's hard. Those are hard to pick up because of the way the TV copy comes out. But I'm just saying there are a couple of those where like that guy's open or that guy is like in a position where you would want to throw a 50-50 ball to him. And we haven't seen a whole lot of those.
Yeah. As someone that for years has taken 4 to 5 hours to rewatch the game, one of the hardest things for me to do is to know whether there are receivers open and the quarterback is not finding them. I apparently am not watching quite the right things. Irishman 50, how does Notre Dame not have a repeat Northern Illinois this week?
I think they're a few weeks away from the complacency of success. It's going to happen again. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but I don't think they're going scorched earth for 11 games. Not even, I looked this up, not even Michigan and their stupid revenge tour that year after Notre Dame beat them. Scorched earth everybody. I mean, they got up and destroyed Penn State, but the Indiana game was close. There's going to be one more game that shouldn't be close that Notre Dame has close. One of those really annoying games that shouldn't. Louisville's a good team. I don't mean Louisville.
Right. Well, I mean, look, Georgia is the most talented team in college football probably right now. Certainly they're the most talented team depth-wise 1 through 85, and they looked like crap last week at Kentucky in a 13-12 win. And there's no other way to say it. And that was a Kentucky team that a week before had been embarrassed on its home field by South Carolina, which, found a way to lose last week against Brian Kelly and LSU. They had one of those infamous come from ahead losses.
Yeah, I don't like the MAC stuff. I think they should be fine this week. It's their first home game since that home game, but I don't think Notre Dame is good enough offensively to just go out and blow the doors off somebody. And that's how you like. Notre Dame plays a style of football that reduces the margin for error.
Yeah.
So you're going to end like maybe it's Georgia Tech. Virginia might be one of those. Like I don't think Virginia's very good, but yeah, kind of weird spot there late in the year.
Like you're home favorite by 16 or something, 17, 19. I don't know. I think I've said a couple times I think Virginia could be a little bit tricky.
Yeah, so I feel like Notre Dame's going to run into one of those again. Doesn't mean they're going to lose the game.
Right. You're just not supposed to lose it.
I mean, I realize everyone loves to hear compliments of Brian Kelly, but like Brian Kelly pretty much always won those games, which was like a compliment to just sort of how he did stuff.
He was
including last week against South Carolina.
Very, very effective CEO. For me, it's not necessarily a letdown performance, but what happens, and it might be Louisville, frankly, what happens when Notre Dame finds itself in a 14-0 hole early and the offense can't be one read and run, or can't be isn't as effective for whatever reason running the football with Price or Love that time. Then that to me is what's scary. If you're a Notre Dame fan, is what happens when this team doesn't. It's not because they're taking somebody for granted, but maybe it's because the defense has a bad series or Jeff Brom dials something up because he's good at that, and then you have a pick six turnover or a fumble kickoff or whatever. I think my concern is, how does Notre Dame respond? What does Notre Dame respond with if it finds itself in an early 14-0 hole? Because we haven't seen that.
this is not a wonderful example because Cincinnati was a playoff team, but let's use Louisville as an example for this. When they lost to Cincinnati, Notre Dame, they drove right down the field and had Jack Cohn roll out, get a pass, kind of tip for an interception. Okay, there goes a touchdown. Cincinnati scored, he kick off, and Chris Tyree drops it. Cincinnati picks up the ball. There's more points. Tyler Buckner comes in because they're trying to get something going, which they were doing. They needed, this is the same type of offense, remember, an offense that doesn't have a huge margin of error in 2021. Tyler Buckner comes in and it's an interception, almost touchdown. They just couldn't recover from that because they didn't have the ability to recover from it offensively. This offense is better than that offense. I'm not saying that, but and this defense is better than that defense, but that is how you get Notre Dame now is something weird happens and they just can't overcome it like Pete said. Yeah.
Well, they better be, as far as Louisville, Notre Dame should be Texas A&M ready for that game, right?
Yeah,
I mean, come on now. Emotionally, you better be
but they're not as healthy. So, yeah.
No,
All right, one more question before we get to predictions. And T.O., I want to throw this at you because you are the best at this.
It's a good story.
And it's from Judge Arthur Vandelay. Any good Chuck Martin stories from his time at Notre Dame?
Well, I'm not going to use one of his time at Notre Dame. Chuck was my neighbor, so I saw Chuck a lot. Chuck was a very avid runner, and he ran fast. You know how people jog? Chuck would run. Like, that dude was still Mr. 12 varsity letter athlete from high school. But I heard a story from one of Chuck's friends last month. He played all 3 sports, so he really didn't have that much time in high school. But he decided his senior year to join the yearbook. They found it very strange that Chuck Martin was on the yearbook because he's playing baseball, football, basketball. Chuck joined the yearbook just so he could get in the picture of every single club in the yearbook. So every single page of sports and clubs had Chuck Martin in it. And Chuck would make the same, I don't know if it was a goofy smile but he did something to be noticed in the picture. And he named himself after like the theme of the picture. So like instead of like Chuck Martin, it would be like Bobby Fischer Martin or Fisher Martin or something if it's the chess club, or Kasparov, or he did something like that for every club he joined. So that is the what you're dealing with in terms of Chuck Martin's first of all desire to be in a yearbook, and secondly humor. He's a funny dude.
Pete, anything come to mind to you?
Yeah, so I went from West Lafayette to Oxford, Ohio, and spent 3 days there. And then I'm going to be with them this weekend too during the game. And he is exactly the same guy that we covered from 2010 to 2013 in volume of and vocabulary during practice. He is a hysterical guy. One story is kind of just funny. It's kind of a BK story, but like he said after the Alabama game, he's like, I'm not going back to South Bend. Like, forget this. Like, this hotel is great. I'm booking it for the next week. You guys are fools. You're going back there. And the next morning at 8 a.m., he's getting all these texts about BK and the Eagles. And he's like, you guys are idiots. He's not going to the Eagles. Like, he's just changing the conversation. Like, everyone's going to stop talking about the Alabama game that all you fools went back to South Bend to hear about at Martin's. And I'm hanging out in South Beach for the next week, just off the grid. And now BK is like changing the conversation. And he is hilarious. It was really cool to sort of see him run the program from the inside. And like, I'm gonna write this story after the weekend, but I learned a ton. He's got a cool staff too, so I enjoyed getting to know them too.
JB, you know Chuck Martin?
No, we've crossed paths a couple of times, but I don't have the depth of knowledge there. So I do know his QB coach Gus Ragland a little bit, who was at Notre Dame.
Yeah,
super good guy, super sharp. So he's got some good dudes, and everybody that knows Chuck so much better than me has the same descriptor for him. It is, man, that dude's a character.
The only people that are more amused by Chuck Martin, I think, is Chuck Martin himself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, he just.
Well, that's the yearbook, right? That's the yearbook.
Right. He knows he's amusing and he plays to it. I went down. I didn't spend as much time as you did, Pete, but I saw him twice since he's been in Miami, Ohio. One was the year that before they came to Notre Dame. And I'm not, so that was 2017. And then I don't know prior to that, but we've talked about this, and we'll move on. We'll get our predictions in then. But so here like I'm letting the recorder run, and we're talking about BK and his time at Notre Dame and just talking about everything. And he talks faster than any human being that you know. And it was great. It was fun. It was interactive. But all I kept thinking was, how the hell long is this going to take me to transcribe this? I mean, this is going to take me forever because he talks so fast. You got to keep rewinding. The rigors of our profession, right? I get it.
You don't volunteer for the Chuck Martin transcript.
Not that tough,
No.
not that physically taxing, but that's one of the things that we have to do. Love Chuck Martin, and he loves Notre Dame. He says it over and over again. He said again this week. But
the 85 picks is the funniest line in a long time. That was Ohio State, not Notre Dame. He said it's like you're going to recess and they have the first 85 picks. Right. That's just fantastic.
Right. All right, fellas, predictions.
I don't think Notre Dame will cover, but I think part of that is I've developed a bias for Miami of Ohio this week, just spending time with their staff. So, but I just think they're going to have a hell of a time scoring almost at all on Notre Dame. So I'll go Notre Dame 37-10, 37-13, something like that. So just barely a cover for Miami. I do think Gabbert is good. I have very serious concerns that they will not be able to protect him at all, especially up the middle with Mills and Cross. So I think that they'll hit him for a couple big plays, but it's not a sustainable situation, I think, for Miami this weekend.
Yeah, I should have gone first because you nearly picked the same damn score I'm going with. So I was sitting here thinking 38-13 for all of those reasons. Had Notre Dame handled Northern Illinois the way I think we all expected Notre Dame to have handled Northern Illinois, then I believe this could have been one of those contests. Not that Notre Dame lost, but that would have ended up maybe being more like a 24-13 type of game. I don't think Notre Dame covers. I'm surprised that odds makers have them pushed back out to a 4-touchdown favorite against a Miami team that is not given up 28 points this year in 2 games. So, in either game has it given up 28 points. So, I'm a little surprised by that. I do think that Notre Dame is continuing to expand its offense. Mike Denbrock told me this week, how close are we? We're really close. We're a couple of confidence plays and a couple of big connections from being kind of off and running. So we'll see if Notre Dame strides forward in that regard. We'll see if Riley Leonard shows a little bit more patience and has enough protection to show a little bit more patience.
Tim, both of those picks are over. The line's 44.5, I believe, the over-under, or the score, the total.
Yeah, that's tough because I think Notre Dame's going to cover because of defense and dominance on defensively. I was going to say I wanted to cover and go over, but I'm not. I have Notre Dame at the 37-7 range covering. I don't think Notre Dame's scoring 40 points, so I guess I'm picking them under. I wouldn't bet any money on the over because it could be right there. But I do think Notre Dame is going to cover, and it's just I think it's still fresh. The NIU game. I think they found something. JB, not only do I agree with you about if they had beaten NIU 30-7, that this game would be closer. I literally wrote that in Monday Musings that one of those 2 games is going to be scary in the fourth quarter. I did not predict the loss, of course, but we already had that game for Notre Dame, and I think Notre Dame will cover this game. But the offense won't look like the Purdue game, though. Pete said the best word. The structure of Miami's defense doesn't allow for 66 points as opposed to Purdue's. But I do think Notre Dame will cover this game.
I'm conflicted, as I usually am on Thursday, because I don't have to make I've got another show that I have to make a pick for here later today. But Northwestern threw for 178 yards. Cincinnati threw for 186. I don't really know how to put that in perspective with their respective quarterbacks. I think Notre Dame can run on Miami of Ohio because we mentioned the other 2 teams have. But I just don't know, if they run, are they longer drives? They take up time. So I'm a little bit conflicted there. But 28's a lot, man. I mean, that's a lot. And I think that totally reflects the fact that Miami can't run the football. So they're not going to be in a position to score a whole lot unless Gabbert does some magic. And like you, Pete, I think he's going to be under a little bit of siege, and he's not as mobile as he was pre-injury. So my prediction comes on Friday, and I'll have to make up my mind. Before we leave, I just want to say that if you enjoyed the Irish Illustrated Insider podcast, you'll also love the videos we're posting on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Be sure to look for us on those platforms. Give us a like, a follow, and share with your friends. Until Saturday with our instant analysis pregame, Tim Priester, Tim O'Malley, and John Bryce, Pete Sampson, this has been Irish Illustrated Insider.